Hey everyone! This tutorial is all about fringe. I promised you in my last tutorial I'd follow up on how to add the fringe to your circular crochet coasters. But you can use the techniques in this tutorial to add fringe to any project you'd like. If you haven't made the coaster yet, you can find the link for the tutorial for that in the description below. This fringe will give your coaster a beautiful finished look, and it's so easy to do. You'll be making baskets full of them from all your scrap yarn. Did I mention they're great housewarming gifts? Okay, let's get to it. So this is the look that we're going for today. We have a nice coaster here with beautiful fringe all the way around. Now I've shown you in another tutorial how to make the coaster, and here we're going to learn how to make the fringe. So the fringe on this coaster is 1 inch long. So in order to make it a nice even inch all the way around, you're going to have to make your strands longer. So before we get going, what are you going to need? You're going to need scissors. You're going to need a crochet hook. You're going to need a ruler of some kind, some yarn in whatever color you want the fringe to be in, and you want enough of it to do the whole coaster. You don't want to run out and have to use a different dye lot. Sometimes you want to do the fringe in multiple colors, and that's fine too. Just have enough yarn around. You won't need a whole ball. It doesn't take that much, but just make sure you have more than just some scraps hanging around. You need your coaster that you're going to work on, and you're going to need something to make the fringe on. So I use a piece of cardboard for this one in particular because I can cut it to the measurements that I want. You can buy pre-made plastic ones at craft stores with different measurements, or you can use a household item as well. Sometimes I'll use Tupperware lids of different sizes, depending on how long or the length of the fringe that I want. This one's good for fringe for a scarf, let's say, and this one's a little bit smaller. But for this coaster, because I want something quite small, I cut one for myself, but you could use like a wide ruler or any piece of cardboard cut to the width that you want. So this particular piece of cardboard I have cut to the width of 2.5 inches. So where I get this from is we're going to be winding our yarn, and I want my strands to be 5 inches long. So 2.5 is doubled, gives you 5 inches. And the reason I want 5 inches is because I want my strands to be 1 inch long. So I always err on the side of caution. So I want them to be at least 1.5 inches, if not more. So I need the strands themselves to be 3. And then the knot that's going to attach them, the loop that we're going to create, is going to take some yarn as well. So I add in, so now I'm rounding up to maybe 4 inches, and then to err on the side of caution, because sometimes they get uneven, I'm going to say 5 inches. If each of my strands are 5 inches, I will not have something that ends up being less than 1 inch long. Because if you cut them down too much, and you didn't leave enough extra, you're going to find some of your strands are less than 1 inch long, and now you have to cut it even shorter. So again, you want to take the length of the fringe that you want and then double it, and then add on probably 1 inch for error. And then I add on another 1 inch for the knot, which is way more than I probably need. So quite honestly, 4 inches would work. But the other thing with really short fringe is that that doesn't give you a lot to work with. So that's why I go to 5. Sometimes I'll even go to 6. So that is why I do it the way that I do it. So let's get our piece of cardboard, and I'm going to start to show you how to get this fringe on here. So if you look at this piece here, I like my little knots to be on the right side. If you flip it over, it looks a little bit different on this side. It's just the way that you loop it on. Some people like this on the front. My personal preference is to have this nice little knot on the front. So to get that, I will be working with my coaster flipped over. So let's go ahead and make some fringe strands, and then I can show you how to put them on. So we're going to take our yarn, And we're going to, now I'll show you here, I didn't put a little clip, but if you just put a nice little clip in there, then you can wedge your yarn in and it'll hold it. So you want the yarn just like that. Now it won't come out. And you want to wrap your yarn loosely around the cardboard as straight as possible. And you just want to wrap, it doesn't have to be side by side as long as you're wrapping around. And we'll just do a few to get started, but you can wrap a whole bunch at once and then cut them. Let's just get some more going here. Okay, that'll be enough for now. Now we're going to clip the yarn back up where we started. And then I just hold it in place with my finger so it doesn't fall backwards and then end up getting cut by mistake. And then you're just going to go across the top where you started, and you're just going to clip these yarn pieces. My scissors aren't the sharpest here. It's okay, we clipped the end off of that one. And now they're going to come off of here, and they're all going to be 5 inches long. So that's what I wanted. That's a quick way to get a whole bunch of strands the same length. So we're going to take 2 of these strands and put the rest aside. And we're going to make sure our ends line up as best as possible. They don't have to be absolutely perfect, but the more perfect, the better. And then we have our crochet hook, which is big enough to hold 4 of these strands, but small enough to still get through these stitches. Usually the crochet hook you use to make it should work. So we're going to just pick somewhere along here. Again, the wrong side is facing us. Pick anywhere you want and go under both strands of the stitch. You're going to loop the yarn around your hook evenly, and then you're going to pull it through gently and just up a little bit, just enough so that you can now go back and pull these strands, get all 4 strands and pull them through. Use your finger to help you. And you've got all 4. So when they come through, they almost always come through at an uneven. You want them to be as even as possible. So because we're still loose here, we're going to pull up the shorter of the batch until they're pretty close to the other one. And then we're just going to even up the knot. So it's a little easier to see when you're on the right side now. So flip it over and just make that knot nice and secure, but not so tight that you're pulling the stitches. So you can see here, the very first one right off the bat is uneven. And that's why I leave so much extra. Because if you didn't leave extra, this one might actually come out shorter than the inch that you're going to aim for trimming. So this still gives me lots of leeway to trim. So let's try another one. We're going to pull 2 more strands off of our bundle. We're going to make sure they are even, because at least we can start out trying to make them even. But often enough, we'll go right in where we did the last one. We'll go right into the next stitch, because every single stitch is going to have a fringe in this case. And we're going to pull it through gently and pull it up. And you're going to try to keep these as even as possible when you pull it through. So now we're going to wrap the yarn, all 4 strands around that needle. And then we're going to pull through. Pull them all the way through. There, those ones worked a little better. And then gently with your thumb holding on to where the knot is, secure that knot, turn it over so you see if this is how you make them look similar to each other. And now we have 2 pieces of fringe attached. So we'll work through another one. So 2 more strands, try to keep them even. Wrap them around your finger, and again, try to keep them even. And make sure you go from the wrong side. So I have to flip it over again. Right in next to where I was. If I don't go right next to where I was, I very possibly will miss a stitch, because as you get more fringe, it's harder to find the stitches. And we're going to even them at the ends. pull it through. If the fringe was much larger, like longer, you could get in there with your fingers. A lot of people like to pull it through with your fingers, but I don't have a lot to work with at this end, so I can't make this loop very big. So I use the crochet hook, pull them through. So see how nice and loose that is, and my ends are nicely even. And then very gently tug them into place, flip it over, and see how the knot there, still a little loose. So just slide it down with your thumb and give it a nice little tug. Again, you're holding here so that you're not like yanking the coaster out of shape. So now we have 3 nice pieces of fringe on there, and we're going to do that all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the fringe all the way around. You keep making more strands. You'll probably have to make more strands a few times. And I'll meet you back here when we've got every stitch with its fringe in it. So here we are, all the fringe is on. Every single stitch has some fringe, and you can see I've got a lot of fringe going on. So to give yourself a nice funky look, you can just kind of trim it down a little bit and have a nice long fringe, but I want to go 1 inch. So here's the thing with this is some people say get a nice disc shape and put it on top and trim around it. That would be a great way to do it, but my coasters I do in different sizes, so I never have a consistent circle that I want. So yes, there are tools out there that are circles of different sizes, and you could just lie it on the center and cut around it, but I don't have those because, like I said, every coaster I do is a different size, and I want my fringe to be different lengths. So you can see here I have the front, or the right side facing up, and I have all the knots nice and evenly spaced around there. So I have everything looking the way I want it. This is the wrong side. So you can tell that every one of the pieces of fringe went on properly. Occasionally I will have it flipped in the wrong direction and put some fringe on, and at the very end I'm like, okay, that one's backwards and that one's backwards. Just take them off. It's easy to do. Just undo your fringe and pull your threads out and then put it back on the proper way. So here we have all of our fringe, and we're ready to do some trimming. So I'm going to have my nice short ruler and my nice scissors, and it would be good if they're sharp. These are the ones I have, so they will have to do. And we're going to start measuring and just snipping randomly around at the 1 inch mark to give us a guide so that the rest of them can be trimmed without having to measure every single fringe. So here we have the inch. So make it from the knot, and you're going to the inch, and just pick up 1 or 2 strands and snip them at the inch mark. This is why it's nice to have sharp scissors, because then you don't have to chunka through it. There we go. So there's your inch. So I'm going to go a little bit further along here, making lots of noise with my ruler. So you can just kind of pull out one of the strands, and we're going to measure to the 1 inch, and we're going to cut. So there we go. So you can see here that we have 1 inch here and 1 inch here. Now you could do another one in here, depending on how your eye works, but I can basically see a line that goes from this one and curves around to this one. And what I want to do is cut along that line, the invisible line. So you can do even more, and I can trim them down. So maybe I'm going to estimate a little bit on the long side, because as I go round, I don't want to cut them too short, but I'm somewhat guesstimating. There. I really don't have very sharp scissors going on here. There we go. So see how it's pretty close to an inch all the way around. This is a touch more. And once I get that basic first layer done, then I can go back and just even it up a little bit. So let's try that out. I'm going to fast forward and show you how I do this in quick time. And there we are. We have it trimmed all the way around. If you want to leave them just like this, which is perfectly fine and looks great, you can just literally go around, pick it up a little bit, and just notice where it's a little uneven like this. And you're just trimming off little bits at a time. So you can just work your way around and you can kind of see where it's possibly a little bit uneven. You can lay it down, you can take a look at it and say, you know, what looks uneven to me? Where do I want to trim it off? And it's not that bad actually, because it is a handmade item and you don't want it to look perfect. Now, if you're looking for the look of this one, see how they're a little bit different? They're also a different dye lot. You can tell that the colors are a bit different. But this one, I used a comb. Just a simple little comb that I got at the dollar store. Because I'm using cotton specifically, it works really well. It'll work with acrylics too, but you might want to be careful not to make your yarn so weak that it falls apart. But in order to get more of this frayed kind of look, all I did is I combed this out. And you'd have to do it gently and you have to do it gradually, but you would just slowly pull the threads apart. And I use like the thicker part of my comb, and I would just pull the threads. See how I just comb it and they eventually separate. So this is a very slow process because you want to be very gentle with your yarn and you don't want to make it so weak that the fringe falls out. So as you do it, they start to separate. And it's best to do it on a flat surface. And you can even get the little prongs of the cone in between the threads. So it separates all the threads of your yarn. Cotton is much easier to do because they're very distinctly woven, or twisted, I should say. And you can just untwist them. Whereas when you get into the acrylics, they tend to fray a little easier, which isn't a good thing. So you can see here how these ones specifically have already loosened up, and you just work your way around the entire piece like that. So this is where it's pretty good that we didn't even it up yet, because as you do this, this will show you even more where it's uneven. So once we've done the fraying, you're going to have a little bit of fuzz here too. You just go around again and just trim the edges nice and even and neatly. And then you're going to have this nice even edge and you'll end up with a piece like this. And there you have it. Beautiful fringed coasters. Make them in all sorts of colors. They're a great stash buster and they're a fun and portable project. Thanks so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this tutorial, remember to please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. So glad that you're here and we'll see you next time.